Okay, let's go ahead and begin. Welcome. My name is Jacob Weiler. I am principal of Aspire Vanguard College Preparatory Academy, and really have been looking forward to this conversation with all of you, and hope that we can provide you with lots of information today, what lies ahead for us. Before we begin, we have a slide deck presentation followed by a question and answer session. Before we begin, I'd like to invite Mr. Rohr and Ms. Rose to introduce themselves, let you know who's in the room.
Thank you,
Hello.
Mr. Weiler. Thank you. Yes, hello, my name is Gary Rohr. I am the assistant principal at Vanguard College Preparatory Academy. I prefer to be standing in front of our school building early in the morning, waving at you as you drive by and drop off your kids. That is where I would rather be. But since that can't happen, it's good to see you here. Thank you for coming.
Hi, I'm Rose Galloway. I'm the Dean of Culture and Climate at Aspire Vanguard, and excited to see faces I know and excited to see new people that I haven't met yet.
All right, and in the interest of time, I'll just sort of give a general welcome also to I see a number of other staff members here. Really appreciate you being here, support our work and our families. And with that, I think I will start to share my screen. And we'll get started with the presentation. So let me try this one different way, sorry. We have a short video I want to make sure you can see.
Mr. Weiler, did you mention that we are recording?
I did not, thank you. Appreciate that. So we are recording this session, and we are doing that so that we can, for families that weren't able to be in attendance, so that we can post this on our school YouTube page. So please be aware of that. Thank you, Ms. Rose. Okay, we wanted to be sure to begin with our school mission. And that is something that we worked very hard on to update last year. And it is something that really gives us a point to anchor on as we make some of these important decisions about what's best for our young people and what's best for all of you. We exist. So our mission is, our statement is that we are an inclusive community dedicated to the belief that all young people deserve an education that inspires excellence, nurtures resilience, sparks joy, and paves the way for collegiate, professional, and personal success. So that's going to anchor everything we try to do for the rest of the school year and beyond. So overview of our time together today, we're going to share our reopening protocols, which are really focused on the health and well-being of our scholars, staff, families, and community. We're going to talk a little bit about the stages that we have planned for reopening. We're going to discuss our on-campus safety practices that we have planned for when we can welcome students back into our building. And we are going to offer time for questions and answers. I've chatted a little bit with our team, and we recognize, as I would feel, that the question and answer period is probably going to be the most important for all of you. With your permission, I'm going to probably move a little bit quickly through some of the other parts so that we can maximize our time together for questions and answers. I would like to encourage you, please, to enter questions as we go into our chat box if you have that functionality available to you. Mr. Rohr is going to be monitoring all of the questions. We anticipate we might get some multiple of the same types of questions from folks. And so he's going to kind of manage that and help me to make sure we answer as many of those questions as possible. All right, let's proceed. So Aspire also has a set of values for the whole organization. And just like Vanguard's mission, Aspire is working really hard to make sure that these values are anchoring the programmatic and policy decisions that we have. So those values are bienestar, or well-being, our culture of belonging, community partnership, agency and self-determination for our students and for families and staff, and making sure that we do everything possible to imbue what we do with a sense of joy. Beyond that, we also have some guiding principles that specifically specifically reference how we get our schools reopened and what we do in the meantime. So what we're focusing on, our guiding principles are health and safety, very intentionally at the top of the list. Making sure we maintain a culture of belonging, which takes a lot of extra work when we can't be in the same room together. Flexibility, meaning that we are going to do everything we can to make decisions that provide the best experience for our students and for you. And that sometimes means creating plans and then adjusting them or modifying them. Equity is the belief that we have an obligation to provide every young person in our school with what they need to succeed. So we like to say that equality is sameness and equity is fairness. And so we really prioritize this idea of fairness, making sure that everybody has what they need to succeed. And community partnerships, that's what we're doing right now, trying to partner with you, but also with all other entities in our community that can help us to be successful. We wanted you to know that we solicited a lot of input and guidance in making the decisions for what schools can look like this year. From public health agencies to state and county guidance, teacher and principal advisory committees, peer CMOs. CMO stands for Charter Management Organizations. Aspire is the largest CMO in the state of California, one of the larger ones in the nation. But we also have other CMOs that we really respect, that serve communities that are similar to ours, that we are paying a lot of attention to. And our CMOs are in conversation because we want to share expertise. And we're also in conversation with neighboring school districts and the Stanislaus County Office of Education. And there's also working groups, what we call our ed team, our operations team, our information technology team, human resources, and more. And I saved for last family feedback. We have sent out multiple surveys. You've participated in that. Over 4,000 Aspire families participated in our surveys. And we take that data very, very seriously. So as a quick overview refresh, we have, like many entities, we've created a 5-stage plan for returning to pre-COVID experience at our schools. Although there's some things we hope innovate on and change forever in a good way. Those 5 stages articulate what we're currently in. Stage 1, which is 100% distance learning, where we're all working on campus. And stage 5 is full in-person instruction, similar to what we experienced all the way up through March of last year. In between that, stages 2, 3, and 4 are degrees of returning back to that pre-COVID experience. We know that you've received messages and information about this, so I'll just briefly reiterate that in stage 2, students will be on campus for 1 day and 4 days at home. And stage 3, students will be on campus for 2 weeks consecutively, or the other half of the student body will be at home for 2 weeks consecutively, and then those two partitions will switch for 2 weeks, and that will last as long as is necessary based on public health data. Stage 4, we have all students on campus for full days of instruction, but we have some very important social distancing and health and safety protocols in place. And stage 5 is when those extra protocols will still be available, but may be able to be lessened. One thing I want to make sure I say about stage 2 and stage 3 is the nature of the work that has to be done, and legislation in place by the state of California means that we are very likely, when we have students on campus, it's very likely that they will not be on campus for full school days. It's likely that they'll be on campus for 2 to 4 hours in each of those stages. And that has a lot to do with teachers having a responsibility to be of service to the students who are on campus, but also teachers having responsibilities for those students who are not on campus. And so in order to be able to serve both of those groups, we have to think creatively about what the school day looks like in those stages. So we know, as you heard late last week, I believe, that our stage 1 distance learning must continue through October 12th at least. And That is because of new guidance that the governor's office has issued, and Aspire doing some calculations and realizing, wow, for Stanislaus County to meet the requirements to reopen schools, there's virtually no way for that to happen, given the data, the public health data, prior to October 12th. In early September, Aspire, specifically our regional superintendent, who oversees the Aspire's now 16 schools in the Central Valley region, will look at our public health data and make a determination about Q2. Either way, we are going to do everything we can to become a one-to-one Chromebook to student school. And so we are going to share information about distributing Chromebooks sometime soon. Some of you have Chromebooks that you retained from last school year. Many of you do not, so we want to make sure we have a really robust process for that. We also are going to share information about grading, and it's rather complex because for our high school students, we need to make sure that our grading policies align with policies that are evolving from the University of California system and the California State University system, who are destinations for many Aspire graduating seniors. SELPA is an entity that provides policy and support for students with special needs, for students with disabilities and individual education plans, IEPs. And so we need to make sure we're in compliance with laws and policies that are evolving around students with disabilities. So as I mentioned, stage 2, stage 3 are hybrid models. If in the Q&A session, if you'd like to ask more questions about that, feel free, but I'll proceed this time. Just a reiteration that we are looking very closely at guidance from the Centers for Disease Control, and again, as it's highlighted here, time on campus will depend on making sure that our teachers can provide support to all students, both on campus and on campus. An important sentence here, we get a lot of questions about this, and we're very pleased to be able to say that students who are immunocompromised will have the option to continue distance learning even if their peers are invited back to campus. So if a student has a medical reason why it is particularly worrisome for the student or the family, or particularly dangerous for the student or the family to be on campus, then we're eager to accommodate that with providing additional distance learning experiences. We are looking for stage 2 and stage 3 at something called Aspire Care, which would be temporary childcare and academic support for the highest needs Aspire scholars. At this time, my understanding is that capacity is going to be limited for a variety of reasons, and the top of the list will be students who are designated as homeless or foster youth, and I'm working with our home office to determine what capacity might be above and beyond that in stages 2 and 3. Again, we're working to distribute technology and Wi-Fi devices. There's a great resource there at aspirepublicschools.org under Scholar and Family Resources that potentially could help you to identify support getting internet access or devices over and above the Chromebook that we're hoping to provide to you. We're going to provide meals during all stages. We are very pleased to be doing that. We partnered with Modesto City Schools last spring, just sort of as an awareness that on short notice, that was the best way to be of service to you. Vanguard will be supporting Vanguard students this time around, and we're thrilled. We are most likely going to provide meals on a single day per week. We think that's going to be most convenient for families. My understanding, again, this is still evolving, my understanding is that the meals will be frozen, and that's why we can provide you 5 meals when you come and pick them up. Families will be able to pick up for students. Students don't need to be present, but we do need to document. We need families to complete lunch forms. We need to keep track of who's picking up meals. So it's more of a traditional lunch documentation experience than what was in place last spring, where the whole nation basically said anybody 18 and under can have a meal anywhere. We also are very pleased to continue to provide social and emotional learning support. That's what we mean when we say SEL. And that's going to be an important part of what we invite our scholars and all of you to join us in doing. So what we know now is that we're going to continue to support you, our staffs, our scholars with needs as they arise. And we're going to try to be nimble, and we're going to try to be adaptable, and we're going to minimize confusion for you, but we're also going to make adjustments when we know that that's what's best for our students. We need to recognize that Aspire has 35-ish schools, and again, 16 in the Central Valley region. And each of us are going to do what's necessary in our county. And so all of the Aspire schools and regions won't necessarily be aligned. And we think that that's probably good news, because that means that we can be maximally responsive to what's necessary in Stanislaus County. We may toggle between stages as the year goes on. In some cases, we might even need to move backwards. So say we're in stage 3, if the public health situation is such that coronavirus cases are on the increase and local officials and the governor issue orders for our county, then we may actually have to move from stage 3 back to stage 2, or from stage 3 to stage 1. So we want to make sure that we hope that's not ever the case, but we want to make sure we're all prepared for that possibility. There is no guarantee that we're going to reach any particular stage this school year. We are absolutely planning with the intent to return all of us to school. We know that that's what's best. We know we miss the heck out of all of you and of our students, and we want to be back together as long as it's safe. And we're working towards that, but we also need to recognize that this virus has proved very unpredictable. And we are going to prioritize health and safety as much as possible. And academic progress, intellectual health and safety is really important as well. So, so we need to be prepared that there's no guarantees about which stage we will reach and when. And as families, you can anticipate ongoing communication and critical updates from Aspire and from me. And I think I'll add here that there are times when I'm desperate to reach out and communicate with you, but I also know I have a school-age child. I know what it's like to get too much communication. And so sometimes I opt to let our organization communicate with you, and I hold back on communication with the hope that is preferable and desirable for you. But please give us your feedback. If you'd like to hear more from me or from anyone on our team, please let us know that, because we're ready to communicate as much as is helpful for you. Okay, we want to just let you know a little bit about some of the safety protocols that will be in place when we get to stage 2 and beyond. So we are making sure we're monitoring guidance on how to keep our school clean and safe. We're going to go above and beyond that guidance. And we believe that we have proven through action that this is a huge priority for us. And we're looking forward to continuing to work with you to make sure that everybody continues to feel that we're prioritizing it. So early screening, cleaning and disinfecting in small student groups. Once we return in stage 2 and 3, those are going to be some things that we're focusing on. So staff will be screened on a daily basis through temperature checks and questionnaires, and students will be going through the same process. So before anyone enters the building, we will be able to determine if anyone has a fever and is exhibiting signs that they might be ill. We have a very robust process in place, including new equipment, electrostatic sprayers, things like that, to make sure we're cleaning and disinfecting thoroughly, and cleaning and disinfecting rooms right after they've been occupied by groups of students. And in stage 2 and 3, keeping groups of students as small as is logistically possible to try to minimize the number of people that our students are interacting with. And that's not only for their health and safety, but also for yours, because we know that they're returning home to you, and for our staff as well. So at home, once we get to this point, we're asking families to take the temperature of your children. Anyone with a temperature of 100 degrees, 100.4 degrees should stay home. And then there's a 14-day self-quarantine for anyone doing international travel. Anyone experiencing symptoms should stay home. And we have guidelines of 3 days with no fever and respiratory symptoms to be cleared to return, or 10 days since the first coronavirus symptoms. We'll work with families to make those determinations. We also want you to know that once we return, we will have a no visitor policy. We recognize this is a bit challenging for parents. It's very contrary to our core values at Vanguard, but we know it must be in place. And we know, frankly, that that's probably what you want, to make sure we're limiting visitors and outsider exposure to your children. We're going to have hand washing stations. We're going to, whenever possible, make hallways single direction and have signage to help students do that to minimize close contact. We're going to have health and hygiene lessons for our students. Meals will be served in safe spaces. Scholars will be remaining in cohorts during stage 2 and 3. We're going to set up our classrooms with maximal distance between students. We're going to monitor our bathrooms, and we're going to make sure we absolutely respect privacy concerns about bathrooms. That's hugely important. We want to make sure our students are comfortable and you're comfortable with what we're doing, but we also are going to make sure we don't have too many young people in the bathroom at a time, because that would violate the social distancing protocols. We are going to refrain from any physical contact with staff or scholars, or in between staff and scholars, unless there's an extenuating circumstance like emergency. Cleaning and disinfecting, we will be using EPA approved products. We will make sure that everybody has the approved personal protective equipment, and we're going to prioritize surfaces like door handles and other surfaces that are most likely to have contact from students and staff. We have daily cleaning cycles that we'll be going through based on which parts of the building will be occupied, and prioritizing those places. So just a reminder of this general idea that we want to keep our schools and our communities safe, and that we're going to be working to educate our young people about what that means, and provide support to you to the extent that that's helpful. We have this short video. This is we're not going to show the whole thing because we want to make sure we have lots of time for Q&A, but this is an example of some of the things that Aspire is putting together to share with students and families to help us all to make sure we're safe and beyond campus. Maybe it's not for sure. Pause it there, but we wanted to share that with you. That's the kind of thing we're thinking about. We want to make sure we're supporting and educating in this area. So again, some things that we'll share on hand washing and face coverings, so that you can help prepare students. We do expect that when students come back to campus, they will be required to wear face masks. We're prepared to work with you and advocate for you in cases where that might prevent some kind of health risk to your child wearing a face mask, and we can address that on a case-by-case basis. But we know that we need to make sure that face masks are breathable. They're worn whenever going out in public, or certainly to school, covers both the nose and the mouth, and it gets washed every single day. And then guidance on hand washing and some things to avoid as well. So we'll be sharing this information. Families, please remember, as we think about approaching, hopefully as soon as possible, coming back to school, symptoms of coronavirus include cough, fever, chills, muscle pain, shortness of breath, sore throat, or loss of taste or smell. Okay. We are at our Q&A session. Thank you for going on that journey with us. Hopefully we've anticipated a lot of your questions. I'd like to make time now to answer whatever we can. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And I am going to ask Roar if you could sort of moderate for us.
Right. Well, we do have quite a few questions already. Most of the earliest questions had to do either with the nature of synchronous learning as opposed to asynchronous learning. What is instruction going to look like this year? Will there be more teacher time? Will it be live? How's it structured? So as much detail as we can give about what asynchronous and what synchronous. Synchronous, folks, means you are in sync with the teacher. You are online at the same time with the teacher and it's live. You're synced together. Asynchronous would be the opposite of that. That's what we had last year when we finished, which was lessons were uploaded, students accessed it on their own without a teacher, and they learned that way. So, Jake, you want to talk about the differences between those two?
Certainly, and if I leave anything out, Mr. Rohr, Ms. Rose, please feel free to chime in. Some of the specific details, like what is happening at 9 a.m. and what's happening at 10 a.m., we're very close to being able to share those with you, but we're still ironing out a few of the specifics. But we do know some big picture things. We know that we want to provide even more robust, regular routine for our students than we started with last spring. We're very proud of the work we did last spring, and we hope that you are as well. But we want to take it up to the next degree because we know we're going to be settling into this for a while. So we will have more of this synchronous instruction. Students will have more time directly in class with their teachers, live speaking with them. But there is a limit to what we believe is sustainable for students and good for students to be for screen time. And we also are also thinking about the ability of teachers to manage all that. So there will be asynchronous time. There will be time, a regular schedule for students to meet with every one of their teachers. And there will be additional work and assignments that students will need to work on outside of that time. And then the third category, we are hoping to continue to offer some version of office hours. But compared to last year, the regular live instruction, there'll be more of that. And as a result, there'll be a little bit less of the open-ended office hours time.
I can share that we did meet with some lead teachers yesterday. Aspire has sent out a minimum of what they want the synchronous or teacher time instruction to be. And it was felt that the minimum was just that, not minimum and not enough. So we're going to create a system that goes well above the minimum in terms of teacher time for the students.
We don't yet know about our grading practices. I anticipate that it will be pass-fail again, but I don't know that for sure. This is in a good way. It's complicated by our need to make sure that we are in compliance with laws that address all categories of our students, including students with disabilities, other groups of students, and so. And again, we want to make sure that we're in compliance with the expectations of colleges and universities. So, so we absolutely have a plan that we are going to be issuing grades. We are going to be progress monitoring and scoring and grading student work, but we're still finalizing exactly what's going to be reported to students and families, whether it's a letter grade or a pass-fail grade.
Also regarding the asynchronous, teachers will still be writing lesson plans that involve asynchronous work, meaning work away from the teacher. That will be the basis of the lesson plan, basically. And so you will, as parents, have access to that. The lesson plans and the work will be done, perhaps with the teacher, some, and then at the student's pace later in the afternoon. And so parents who found that beneficial, parents who found that it was convenient for them at night to see the work and to help their kids on it, that will still be in place as well. Even though we are increasing teacher face time, the lesson plans will still be on the computer, still be accessible to parents, and still allow you to interact and help your children with it. We haven't, we haven't, as Mr. Weiler said, we don't have the specific detail about when the classes are going to be. The very nature of the daily schedule, the timing, 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, but that will come very shortly. We're very close to that. I think that covers it. If it didn't, go ahead and ask another question. We have a question that states, what if we choose to maintain distant learning when a time comes for students to return? Is there a process for that in terms of a doctor's note, or what can they do to maintain that distant learning?
Sure. I'm going to opt to answer this question as openly as I can, but what that means is that there's some uncertainty about a couple of the details. So we know, as we said, if a student is immunocompromised, we know that we are going to provide basically permission for that student to continue to do distance learning. For those students, once we return to stage 3 and stage 4 and stage 5, it will be difficult because teachers will be basically busy all day long with live instruction in person. Those students will have almost 100% asynchronous, independently paced learning. And of course, we can arrange check-ins with teachers and things like that. What I don't know is whether a doctor's note will be necessary or whether it's simply parent discretion. I don't know the answer to that, and that's going to come from our organization. I also don't know about concerns about indirect immunocompromised individuals. So I heard from one parent who had a very legitimate concern that said, my child is not immunocompromised, but somebody who essentially lives in our house is. And so I'd like to keep my child home. I can't say at this time whether the immunocompromised policy will apply to that particular young person. But I consider it my job to try to advocate and support as much as possible. I also know that in the survey that's going to come out from Aspire, there's going to be a question about family interest in, I don't know what they're going to call it, but a virtual academy. It's not something we're definitely doing. It's something that's being explored. And that would be, you're still a Vanguard student, but you have 100% online through different curriculum, different teachers, and it's less of the back and forth. So I don't know if we'll be offering that, but if there's enough families that prefer that, we obviously are going to take that very seriously.
Okay, the questions are rolling in, Mr. Weiler. Do they have to come to Vanguard to pick up their meals, or could they go to another school somewhere to pick up the meals?
Here's my understanding at this time. The federal government issued what's called a waiver that allowed school districts to give lunch to anybody, whether that student was enrolled at your school or not. My understanding is that waiver is no longer in place. And so Vanguard students can only get lunch at Vanguard if they're getting lunch through the free and reduced lunch system. So we are hoping at Vanguard to combine our operations as much as possible with UCS, because we know that we have a lot of families that have children at both of our schools. So we might have a single pickup station, but as of right now, no waiver has been issued allowing what they call open school lunch pickup. Some people are lobbying for that waiver. And if the waiver is issued, then we will adjust our plans accordingly.
Mr. Weiler, go ahead, I'm sorry, please.
It does appear that UCS and Vanguard will run 2 separate lines. However, they will happen at the same time to make it more convenient for families. That's what I heard yesterday, but it's still up in the air.
It's still that's still evolving.
Okay.
Even into yesterday evening.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, Mr. Weiler, and I think in lieu of a face mask, can a child wear a face shield?
I don't know the answer to that question. We're going to have to follow up with that. We know that there are concerns about very young children, which generally doesn't apply to Vanguard. And we know that there are concerns about like students with asthma or other kind of breathing situations. So my best answer is I don't know right now. And we are keeping a list of things that we need to follow up on. So we will do that and get some clarity.
Okay, the next question, there's some specificities to it, to the one who was asking that maybe we can talk to specifically later. But she does raise a good question regarding the process of incoming 6th graders who have an active IEP. How is that going to work? How do they get folded into our system?
So we are, as with every year, I think a lot of that process is going to work like a typical process. We are aggressively seeking to get physical copies of files of students of all students, but certainly students with IEPs, because we need that documentation in order to determine what our steps are. So we're working on that, and we will be in communication with those 6th grade families. I also think, I'm not certain, but I think, based on something I heard yesterday, that we will be, for students in all grades, doing quick IEP meeting, not quick, but special IEP meetings to do addendums to IEPs that basically acknowledge that we have to be in distance learning. And so there's opportunities during those meetings to raise any particular concerns. We are committed to supporting our students with IEPs as much as possible. I'm working with our special education team to talk about when is the best time to provide special check-ins in very small groups or one-on-ones with those students. And so we want to make sure we're getting parent input on that as well.
There's a specificity aspect to this as well about UCS students coming over to Vanguard. Their Chromebook at UCS had the apps needed for them for the IEP. Can they keep that until those apps are loaded on the Vanguard computer, or how does that work?
That is a fantastic question. I know I at least see we have Mr. LaPena on the call. So, and Mr. LaPena is going to be working with our 6th graders. So I'm going to ask Mr. LaPena, if you don't mind, if you could on your own start to investigate that. Broadly speaking, there's a pretty serious effort to, when a student leaves a school to go, for example, from UCS to Vanguard or from Summit to Vanguard, it's pretty important to return the device to the old school and get a new device from the new school. But that is such a great question because, yes, it can take a little bit of time to get apps put onto a device. And so we definitely should look into that. Thank you for raising that.
The next question is a concern I think probably shared by many, many families. 2 working parents, they can't dedicate 6 to 8 hours of teaching and work full-time as well. Is there anything out there that can help them? Any resources that we know of that can help them in those situations?
I think we know some anecdotal things. I think the first thing I want to say is that we are trying to design our stage 1 program very much with that concern in mind. There's no evidence to suggest that it's good for kids to be sitting on Zoom for 6 hours, 5 days a week. And if we thought that was the case, we would consider that and try to make it easier for folks to go do some work. But we have very little evidence to suggest that so much time on Zoom is good for learning. That being said, we are trying to maximize what is sustainable for students and staff so that we can hopefully help to address that. In terms of specific resources to supplement or augment what parents are doing, one example of something that I've heard is something called Air Tutors. And you can sort of sign up. It's a fee-based thing, so I can't necessarily recommend it. I can only say that it exists and things like that exist. I have heard that in this current national situation, those services are starting to raise their prices because demand is going up. But one thing we may be able to do is to start asking around, and perhaps in the next weeks or months, we could offer a list of things like this that we're aware of that could supplement support for students.
An understandable 6th grade family coming new to Vanguard, not knowing us, getting anxious about communication and understanding what the schedules will be, what the options will be, what the expectations and the guidelines for students. Hopefully today's gathering is quelling some of that and all, but there is a stated concern of wanting to know more sooner. And that's very understandable. I think we all want to know more sooner as well, not to minimize your situation, but we try to get out to the community any hard information that we have as soon as we have it. But decisions are being made hourly, if not daily, if not hourly, on a lot of this. So we don't want to say, well, it looks like it's going to be A, when later it turns out to be B. So when you hear from us, if it takes long, it's because we got the information in a very concrete way when we did, and we give it to you as soon as we can.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah. So this is not really a question, more of a statement that students struggle working through the computer and they learn more when they're dealing directly with a person. Couldn't agree with you more. And if the virus was not infiltrating our society, that's exactly what we would be doing. But unfortunately, because of the health dangers that exist all around us, it's just not safe. And so we do what we have to do. It's nobody's wish. And so that's why we are increasing the amount of time that a student will spend with their teachers this time around. They will see their teachers on a much more frequent basis with instruction at hand. We're trying to maximize that as much as possible because we agree completely with you that being a teacher myself, I know that you need to be with them. And we're trying to maximize that as much as possible. Yeah, do we have an idea, Jake, when the synchronous hours of teaching will be held?
We very likely. I'm gathering just some final input from some folks on, you know, whether it's at this 30-minute chunk we start or we wait an extra 30 minutes. But we know that most of the live synchronous instruction is going to be happening in the morning through noon to 1 o'clock. So we'll be starting somewhere between 8:30 and 9, and we'll be going with some short breaks and one longer break. We'll be going until about 1:15 or 1:45. That is the plan. That will be, this is important to add, that will be 4 days a week. So in order for teachers to be able to address the live instruction and then be able to provide feedback and plan for the part of the work that students need to do independently, we need to ensure that there's some time for them for that. So 4 days a week will be that. It's kind of, what we're trying to do is make every day feel like what we used to call a minimum day or early dismissal day, like a Wednesday schedule. And exactly the specifics of that, we're still hammering out, but that's our plan. One of the challenges is we've heard anecdotally that middle school and high school students are having a hard time logging on at 8:30 in the morning, and that their best time is 10 or 11. And while that's backed up scientifically, we are also trying to balance that with what's realistic for families, particularly for folks who might have to work. So if we said we're going to start our program at 11, we know that solves some problems, but creates new problems. So we ask for your feedback. Once we share this information, probably through Parent Square, probably in about a week or two, week and a half, we'll have all the details hammered out. But we'd love your feedback, and we'll refine the experience as we go into August and September.
Jake, what will happen for students who need to be pulled out, resource pull out for math and reading? How is that going to be handled?
So we're going to work on that on a case-by-case basis. We basically the same as we always do. We're going to try to minimize pull out of really important instruction, especially in English, math, history, science. And we may have opportunities in some other classes where it's agreeable to the student and the parent to do some pull-out. There also will be office hours, and we do expect that our ed specialists will have some time to work directly with students with IEPs in the afternoons when students are doing independent work. They won't be able to, realistically, they won't be able to be with the students every afternoon for the full afternoon, but hopefully some appointments during that time.
And what about the family that wants to, maybe there's a school nearby that is having live instruction. Can they pull their student from Vanguard, have their spot saved, attend the live instruction school, and then when we open live, come back?
So I cannot guarantee any spots once the student disenrolls. We want to be a home for our students as much as possible. So if a family chooses to do that, we are certainly going to be very empathetic and support that family. And if the family chooses to do that and wishes to come back, and if we have an open seat, and if your child is at the top of the list for the open seat, then we will welcome your child back with open arms. We'd be delighted. There's a lot of ifs there, though. We might fill the seat while your child is gone. We might not fill the seat, and we might be in the process of filling the seat, but perhaps your child would not be at the top of the list. So unfortunately, I would not be able to guarantee that we could hold a spot. We don't. The process doesn't allow it, and the legal constraints on charter schools also does not allow that.
Jake, will synchronous learning minimums be mandated for students?
Oh, so yes, they are required. We're going to use the word required. Vanguard is requiring students to attend synchronous learning. If students are completing assignments, thriving in class, and not showing up, then teachers and administrators are going to work with the family and the student to figure out how to address the fact that they're not showing up. But policy is that attendance at synchronous sessions is required.
Sometimes students will think their parents don't know anything and won't listen to them when they're trying to help them with their homework. And they'd much rather reach out to a teacher through the email or whatever other means is possible. Is there a possibility for homework groups or similar structures facilitated by some of the staff?
I think absolutely yes. The way that we're going to ask our staff to focus on getting our basic system up and running in the first several weeks of the school year. We want to make sure that we're communicating clearly about it to all of you. We want to make sure that students understand the rhythm. We also know, I mean, I feel that I'm carrying around an emotional wound and a great emotional weight as a result of everything that we've all been through, and the isolation and missed summer traditions and other things that could be going on for students. So we want to make sure that we have opportunities to support students as appropriate with that. And I think that it's a great idea. And I think once we determine, okay, we've created this new thing, every district in the country is trying their own thing. You know, did we get it right? We really believe we are getting it right, but did we? Once we see that, then I think we will have a chance to take a breath and say, okay, can we supplement with some homework groups, either facilitated by a teacher or somebody else? So certainly open to that. But I want to make sure we focus on a high quality core instructional program first and foremost.
Is there going to be one location where parents can access all the information for every class instead of having to go to different platforms?
So I am thinking a lot about keeping things simple for parents. And so I'm philosophically committed to that. There are some technical challenges to that. We are going to ask all teachers to use Google Classroom. We are going to continue to use PowerSchool for attendance and a lot of grade reporting. And we are going to try to ask all teachers to commit to one app, all teachers using the same app for messaging parents. Because we know, like, if teachers are using, if your child has 4 teachers and they're all using a different app, and you've got a lot of passwords and usernames you got to keep track of, and that's challenging. So we're going to try to simplify it that way. I don't currently know of any technology that would allow a teacher to click one button and see all of the assignments for all of the students in that in that parent's family. So I will try to put some thought into ways that we could maybe have like an info clearinghouse, but we'll start with focusing on Google Classroom, focusing on a single parent messaging app, and PowerSchool and Parent Square, of course.
Want to take a sip of water?
Me?
Yeah.
Sure. Thank you.
When will the students get their schedules, and when will they be able to meet their teachers?
Normally, we had plans for schedules to go out in May. We had plans for this to be the earliest ever distribution of schedules. And obviously, things changed. So we are going to get schedules out. First day of school is August 10th. We're going to get them out as soon as possible. And we haven't been able, it's built, we know, especially for high school, and we know who's going where and when in a regular school year scenario. So all of that has been figured out, but we haven't been able to finalize putting everything into the databases because we had to finalize what our stage 1 school day was going to look like. So now that we're almost on that, then we can start putting in names into the computer databases, and then print out reports and schedules and send them out to families. I would guess somewhere around August 1st, August 5th, something like that. It's going to be closer to the beginning of the year than I would like, but that's probably my best, most realistic estimate.
Will Vanguard have contact tracing protocols in place once in-class learning begins?
Yes, certainly. I'm very aware of how that works for staff. We have very specific contact tracing protocols for adults in the building. And one of the things that we're thinking about for stage 2 and 3 is contact tracing is sort of baked into the design of the how students are grouped in stage 2 and 3. So we know, we hope it never happens. We know if a student in a particular group of 6th graders becomes ill, then we automatically know everybody that student was in contact with during the school day, because we're restricting interactions to, in many cases, a single teacher while they're on campus, and just 8 to 16 classmates. So it's pretty easy in that scenario to do the contact tracing.
And the synchronous instruction, the synchronous Zoom time, will that be recorded so that working parents can review it once they get home?
Our default is not to do that. Maybe we can add to our list, what are our options? It's complicated to record a Zoom call because we can take pictures and video of students for internal use, but we don't have permission to distribute photos and videos of all students and share them with the community. So most likely we're going to discover that that's not possible. But I think it's worth looking into because it's a very reasonable question.
Jake, what is an IEP?
An IEP is an acronym that stands for Individual Education Plan, and it is a legal document for students with disabilities in response to federal legislation. And so students are determined to have an academic or learning disability, or even in some cases a physical disability that impairs learning or complicates learning. There's a process to determine whether a student has an IEP. And so I see another question about, if a student has an IEP, well, in that document, it articulates things that the school will do, things that the teachers will do to make accommodations and to account for the disabilities that a student might have. And yes, we are proud to make sure that we're still putting those accommodations in place during distance learning, and we're legally obligated to do that. So we recognize that some of those things, like one very common accommodation on an IEP is you can take your test in a special room or in a quiet space. Well, obviously, that's not something that we can easily simulate in distance learning. In fact, everybody's doing that by default. So there's some things that just don't make sense in stage 1 or even stage 2, but we're going to maximally make sure that students are getting their services to the extent that's physically possible.
And as well as
sorry, I had a quick question in regards to IEP. My son was in the process of getting one back in October before he went to his trip to New York. I never received any follow-up in regards to it. So he never got one done, so I don't know what the process would be.
Okay, so we'll want to make sure we address that. So we'll make sure we've got your name from your name card on Zoom, and we'll make sure we follow up with that because that sounds important.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So with this strange concept of distant learning, that concept of homework becomes a little confusing, especially for parents. The question is, will homework be posted through Google Docs, or will it be sent in a syllabus format as well?
So it will be on Google Classroom, which is a Google product where teachers can list what the assignments are. Excuse me. At this time, I'm planning to leave it up to teacher discretion about exactly whether it's in a slide deck or whether it's on a more of like a regular document. If I get a lot of feedback from parents about a preference or about like, hey, this format is very difficult for me to understand or for me to access, if I get a lot of feedback, I'll certainly consider asking teachers to align on that. At this time, other than posting on Google Classroom, the formatting, I leave that up to teachers.
We've got about a little over 30 questions still.
So something I meant to mention before is we anticipated this might be the case. By my clock, it's just about almost 10. I am available till 10:15. Our admin team has other commitments at 10:15. So if you feel like your questions have been answered and you kind of know the information that's coming down the pipeline, feel free to say farewell, and we'll be in touch with you soon. If you'd like to stay on and hear about any additional questions for the next 15 minutes, please also feel free to do that.
The next question, I'm not sure what is meant, but the question is, will there be some type of roundup this year? Roundup is in quotes.
An orientation. So I think that we are working on some orientations and we're trying to determine the best format to deliver those. So it looks like perhaps a format that goes out just to 6th grade, to 7th grade, to divide it up a little bit to make it more effective for parents and more opportunities to answer questions.
How many hours a day will the teacher be online teaching?
We think, boy, I don't have we're continuing to make adjustments to it yesterday. I believe the teacher and students will be online 3 to 4 hours a day, 4 days a week. I believe that's what we're settling on. Apologies if I'm off by a half hour or so when we distribute that.
When they're ready to go back to school, and I'm assuming by that they mean fully back, how many students will be in the classroom for 8th grade? It depends on the stage.
What was the last thing you said? Sorry.
I'm just saying that the answer would vary according to the stage that we're in. But
yeah,
yeah.
In general, we have up to 32 students in our classes. In very, very, very rare cases, like in high school, if it's a class that we don't offer very often, sometimes we'll have more. But in general, up to 32. And I think our 8th grade class is close to that. I think it'll be around 30. And then in stage 2, we will break each class into either 3 subgroups or 4 subgroups. So there will be 8 to 10 students during stage 2 and approximately 16 students in stage 3. I'm deliberately waiting to plan stage 2 and stage 3 in great detail. We do have a plan, but frankly, it's 2 months away and a lot's going to happen between now and then. So I think the best way I can serve this community is to continue to gather information, let you know generally, like we did today, what it's going to be like, but continue to allow ourselves to adapt and modify as we get closer to that decision date. So we'll probably share specifics about that in September at the earliest, if we can return to stage 2 in the second quarter.
Let's talk a bit about the Chromebooks. How's that going to work?
We think that the methodology we had in place was largely effective for families, so our distribution will be the same. One of the things that I would like to be transparent about is that we have more students than Chromebooks by a little bit, and the entire planet suddenly needs Chromebooks for schools throughout the world. And so we have in place plans to, we've already ordered enough Chromebooks for all of our students. So we are pretty confident that we can get a Chromebook to everybody who needs one. We're feeling pretty good about that. And there might be a small degree of troubleshooting we need to do with families if that's not the case.
Should families still purchase uniforms for their students this year?
We are not going to require students to dress in dress code during the synchronous instruction. So families might want to hold off on making that decision until we get closer to when we know we're going to be returning to campus. That said, of course, we want to make sure students aren't wearing anything that's got text on it that's offensive or very out of line with our school values. But no anecdotes came to me from last spring about issues with that. So hopefully it won't be a problem.
I'll take the next question. If you don't, you can take some more water. Is a different senior sunrise a possibility? And the answer to that is sure. We hold these traditions very dear to our heart. It's what makes Vanguard special. And we care very much about these things. So, we will do what it will probably be online somehow. We will do what we can. And if miracles happen and virus clears and the sun is shining and everyone can go back and there's still time left, we can do it in person. But short of that, we will find a way of doing it online. Will there be a daily log that working parents can check to make sure their child is on task daily?
So essentially, Power School. I might actually ask one of our teachers that I see here whether you would recommend monitoring progress on Google Classroom or whether you would recommend doing that on Power School. And if you feel like there's some things that we still need to hammer out, and then feel free to say that, because that's helpful for me to hear that too.
And the next question, I think, has to do with the recording of Zoom meetings, not by us, but by the student themselves. Is recording a Zoom meeting by students so they can review later if they're having challenges with new concepts permitted? Can they record?
I'm guessing no, and I'm furthermore guessing that they don't have that functionality when they log in. Because the teacher is the host, so the teacher controls the functionality of everybody else in there. We have really, really, really great, incredible young people. And sometimes, very rarely, a young person makes a choice that isn't the choice that they're going to make when they're grown-up adults. And so I'd hate for somebody to get teased by somebody recording a Zoom call and then using that in a way that's unkind. So I see the value, but I think the risks probably outweigh the benefits.
Couple of questions about 6th grade camp. will it happen at a later date so that it's safe to do so? And if not, will they be allowed a 7th grade science camp? Or will there be a virtual camp opportunity?
There will almost certainly not be a 6th grade camp this year, in part because it's not possible to do it now, and because, so I'm huge about experiential learning. I love being outdoors, so 6th grade camp aligns philosophically with things that are important to me. And I am very concerned about lost instruction from last spring, and the possibility of I believe that we are going to need to maximize every minute on campus once we can get our students back on campus. So I don't anticipate we will do a traditional 6th grade camp this year. Foothill Horizons is our partner for that. They are offering a virtual 6th grade camp experience, but it's kind of designed for the assumption that students were going to be back at school. So even that, I'm not sure how realistic it is.
We've explained our synchronous and asynchronous systems. The question is, what about college courses on campus? Will they be following that as well, or is that entirely up to MJC?
It's entirely up to MJC, but it is our privilege and our duty to support students with that. So MJC has every class at MJC will be online for the fall. I believe there might be like some very, very rare exceptions to that, where like organic chemistry, where you have to go into the lab and use the beakers and stuff like that. Welding, obviously, you can't do from home. I don't believe any of our students will be enrolling in any of those kinds of classes. And so all of our students will be taking MJC courses online. There are some MJC courses that are coded by the college in such a way that they cannot be delivered asynchronously. So they can occur online, but if they do, they have to be live instruction. So we've partnered with MJC for 3 courses. 2 of them are just students work at their own pace. They log in whenever, they complete their work. If they have a question, they email their teacher, that's it. One of them, public speaking, has to be on live, interactive. So we've asked MJC to offer that, I believe, at like 5:30 p.m. so that we knew that students would be done with anything that they might need to do at Vanguard, and then they would be able to log in with their MJC instructor. So we've encouraged some of our high schoolers to enroll in that, and we'll do the paperwork when we start interacting regularly on August 10th.
Mr. Weiler, can a student not use a Vanguard laptop? Can they use their own personal laptop?
Yes, and I'm committed to getting a Chromebook to every student. And if you are in a situation in the first couple weeks or months where you have a personal device that will work and provides no disadvantage to your child, that's frankly helpful to all of us if your child does that.
So some families have received Chromebook and they've held on to it. Do they keep it and continue to use it into the next quarter, or do they have to turn it back?
So most likely it's just you keep it. We do need to re-inventory all of our stock. So there is a chance that we'll ask you to bring it by, and we'll laser the barcode on it, and then that's it, just to re-update our inventory. But there's also a chance that even that is not necessary. We're working on that. Our team is working on that as we speak.
Apparently there's a 9th grade student who's very ambitious and wants to enroll in MJC classes. How do they sign up? And then will there be information sessions for high schoolers? We're excited for our 9th grader, but we have specific questions such as, how can we get her enrolled in some MJC courses?
Yeah, so the best thing to do, and maybe Ms. Rose, you could put Ms. Rodriguez's email address in the chat box, but the best thing to do would be to email Jessica Rodriguez. She is one of our 2 academic counselors, and she'll be a point person for our 9th graders. And if you can just email her and explain what you're interested in, she can help with that. MJC's policy is that anybody 13 years of age or older can enroll in courses, but please keep in mind a couple things. Number one, the school, Vanguard has to approve that. So we want to make sure your child is going to be successful, especially if you're in the 13, 14, 15, 16 age range. So we usually give people the benefit of the doubt the first time around. But if your grades in middle school were not super robust, we might ask you to wait. The other thing is that, especially brand new, we call it dual enrollment, when you're in secondary school, middle school or high school and MJC at the same time. If you're just starting out, you are that bottom of the totem pole. You get the dregs, you get the last open spots at the college. So we have some pretty good knowledge about courses that are frankly easy, that are really good if it's your first ever course, and they're more likely to have open spots. So we'll ask you to work with us on that as well. If you're in ninth grade, you should not go right into English 101. First of all, you won't get a spot. And secondly, you should get your feet wet first. So if you email Jessica Rodriguez, that's a great way to get the work started.
And just click on the chat button that you see on the bottom of your screen, and you'll see Rose has just put in Jessica's email address. Be careful with that last part of the email address, though, because that last letter is on the second line, and I don't want you to miss that. No, there's nothing you could have done about it, Rose. That's all. It's nothing you could have done. Hey, there's a student out there who has a one-to-one aid through an IEP. How will they be supported?
So is this a new student? Well, I don't want to ask the family to necessarily share too much information here. If it's a student that is returning to Vanguard, then we will continue whatever we had in place, and just like with everybody else, we'll review the supports that are in place and make adjustments as needed. If it's a brand new student, I encourage you, if you have not done so already, I encourage you to call our office and make sure that we're aware, because like I said, we can only do what we have paperwork for, and sometimes, unfortunately, it takes other schools a long time to send documentation to us. So if you're a new student to us and that's the case, that would be so wonderful if you could check with our office and confirm that we have your paperwork, and then we can start exploring what we can do to continue that service or make decisions with you about the right way to proceed.
That's it. Except we got some private messages of thanks and gratitude. So we appreciate those very much. We are working in a situation.
Yeah, we have probably about a minute left. Any burning, urgent questions you see in there, Mr. Rohr?
We're done. All the questions are done.
All right.
Really quickly, just going back really quickly, you mentioned something about online communications class. I took that class last semester. It is fabulous. It's the first time they've ever done that here at MJC. And I highly recommend it for any of your juniors and seniors, because it will teach them how to do like an interview and stuff like that, that will be like via Zoom or anything. So it's definitely more almost kind of theatrical rather than a regular communications class. Fabulous though.
Was it called online communications, or was it communications, but they just customized it for online?
They customized it, and I believe that they've been working on this program for a couple of years, but they didn't have the approval for it. And then they had to adjust and went on to it. But it really is great. It really is great.
Thank you.
Thank you. I've got another question. Cecilia wrote, if the audio on the Chromebook is not working properly, should she return it?
Yes, indeed. Absolutely, because that's an important feature, and we want to make sure it works for you.
We're not supposed to worry about communicating too much. Thank you for all you are communicating. Appreciate it, but don't worry about communicating too much. Communication is welcome. Of course.
Thank you, everybody. We've been looking forward to this. It feels good to be with you, and we miss you all and love you very much. And thank you for being part of our Vanguard family. And call the office or email any of us if you have any other questions. Bye-bye.